Hello. Good morning, everyone. How's everyone doing? Awesome. Well, I'm excited to be here and kick off this session with you. We will cover a lot during this 40 minutes, and there will be Q&A at the end for about 20 minutes. But before I start on that, my name is Anish Baby George, and that is my actual name. In case you're wondering, you can ask me about it afterwards, but yeah, that is my actual name. I lead Games Growth and Monetization practice, specifically focused on Horizon Worlds. What that means is that I spend a lot of time in your creations, in your worlds, in your games, trying to figure out what's working well and what could use some leveling up, right? And so I take all that stuff and combine it together into recommendations and consultations that I take to some of you. I think some of you have already met, and many of you I will meet over the next weeks and months. But essentially, I use these recommendations to help you build more sustainable, strong worlds that do really well on their acquisition, engagement, retention, and monetization. So that's my job. A little bit of background as to why am I here doing that, right? I've been in Meta for about 3 months now, although it feels like much longer. But my background is all in product management. I've done product management for about 15 years. I've spent all of that time in free-to-play games, both in mobile and PC and web. Worked several years at Electronic Arts on franchises like Tetris, Bejeweled, Pogo, Plants vs. Zombies, and then also dabbled in a couple of startups, building out 3D party platformers, and even touched very similar UGC-led content platform that is similar to Zepeto. It was like a sister concern that we had. It didn't really pan out, but it was a great experience. So I have this opportunity now to take all that experience and then help you build stronger worlds, right? So that's why I'm here. Having said that, oh, wait, I didn't even get to my slide. That's me, cool animation. All right, so we've got a lot of ground to cover, right? We will start with code loops, and I'm sure many of you already know what a code loop is, but we'll take the exercise of just reminding ourselves that, and then how to make it effective, and then we'll go into a little bit of how we create goals for the players, and how do we layer them so that we can have highly retentive games. And then finally, we'll talk about live services. Now, I know live services mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people, so we'll kind of try and get on the same page there a little bit. And then from there, if we have time, and if Jen doesn't kick me out, we'll talk a little bit about data and some user motivation. So it's a lot, right? And so I might, as I go through this, I might start speaking faster and faster. Jen, remind me to slow down. All right, awesome. So let's get going. What is a code loop? It is a repeatable set of actions that define your primary player experience, right? That's really it. It has 3 parts to it. There's an objective, there's an action, there's a reward, right? In case of a popular match 3 game like Gardenscapes, the objective is I want to decorate and renovate my garden, right? And the action that you take is you match tiles and you solve puzzles, right? And as you go through it and do that, you receive rewards. Now, the rewards are in the forms of stars or XP, and you use that reward to reapply it to your objective, which is to decorate and renovate. And this feeds the cycle. And you repeat this over and over again. You can apply this to the context of this popular game in Roblox, which my kids play all the time, and I tell them to get off it, get off it. But it's the same loop that works in there, right? Your goal or your objective is to make your collection the best, right? And in order to do that, you need to go acquire a brain rot. And once you've acquired it, it starts generating income, and you use that income to satisfy your goal again, which is improve your collection. So that's how code loops work, right? But what makes them effective, right? This is the key question. I'm going to talk about 5 things that we think, from my experience and from research that our UXR teams and game design teams have done, about what makes code loops effective. What would be great is if you were to make notes regarding your own worlds about how each of those aspects works for you, right? And maybe you're doing it already, right? And if you're not, you have action items that you can take back, right? The first one in here is about anticipation, action, and reward. The code loops work because they are a psychological reward cycle inside the human brain, right? The pursuit or the anticipation of a reward creates a desire to keep repeating it. And that's the fundamental science behind it. So if you take an example like Shovel Up, which I'm sure many of you have tried out and seen, it does a great job of showcasing what the platform's capable of. You will see that there is very clear communication of each of these pieces, meaning when I come into the game, it tells me where to go, it gives me an idea of where to dig, and as I dig, it gives me feedback on whether I'm doing it right, and once I get what I need out of it, it tells me I've succeeded in it. And then it also, after I've gotten the reward, shows me that I'm progressing along an XP or a task, right? So there is clear, consistent feedback to the player on every piece of the code loop. So surfacing it is the first key piece to making it effective. And then you have to tightly connect it. The reward that you give needs to feed into the objective, right? And you have to also make sure that the reward is compelling, right? If you give them something that's not as worthwhile, over time, players will tend to churn, right? So that's the first piece. So think about how you are doing this in your games. Are you communicating things clearly? Are you making sure the rewards are compelling, and are they connected tightly? The next up is instant gratification. Now, immediate satisfaction leads to positive reinforcement. I'm showing shovel up again because it is not that the positive satisfaction happens only when the reward is given. It happens every step of the way, right? When I make the first dig, it tells me quickly whether I did a good job, whether it was great, whether it was perfect, whether it was wow, right? When I start engaging with the code loop and I continue digging, it tells me how many points am I gaining by doing it correctly, right? So it gives me another point of feedback. Once I succeed in it and the particular item appears, it celebrates it based on whether it is a common item, a rare item, or an uncommon item, right? And then once I've done all that, it gives me the rewarding gems, and the gems go into your progress bar and it fills up, making me feel like I've done an amazing job, right? So feedback and satisfaction happens at every step along the way, right? So ensure that in your games you provide clear and strong feedback using VFX, SFX, and animations. Make sure that the feedback happens immediately as you're taking the action, right? If things are disconnected, then that loop doesn't work, right? And then the feedback should be commensurate to the reward. If you're getting a super rare item, you need to celebrate it, right? If you're getting a common item, you don't need to celebrate it that much, but still give positive feedback. So as a combination of these things, you create positive reinforcement. If you've dialed the first two parts in, then comes what is known as flow state. This one's a little bit more complex in the sense of it is that intensely satisfying experience that you have when you're playing certain games where you forget about everything else and you just engage nonstop. Usually that happens because the game challenge is matching your skill perfectly, right? If the code loop is too hard, players get frustrated. If the code loop is too easy, players get bored. So you need to find a place where you can match it. I want to give a shout out to Zombie Wave Defense. They've done an amazing job in creating the foundations of a flow state, right? You start off with a simple weapon, you go up against zombies. As you figure out how to deal with them, the waves increase, they get bigger, more complex, and then you have to upgrade your own weapons in order to be able to match that. And it puts you in a cycle of wanting to continue that experience over and over again. I want to go back for a second and then give a shout out to Tiny to Titan, because they did an amazing job with being able to make you feel highly satisfied as you're engaging with the loop. As you pick up items, as you consume items, you get immediate feedback that flies in your face that tells you, oh, it's plus 200, plus 300, plus 500. Keeps you wanting to do more and more of it. Sorry. Stepping back to cover that in a quick second. All right, so we've got three things that we've covered now. The fourth is about variable rewards, right? Uncertainty can make pursuit of rewards very exciting. Example here is Monopoly Go, right? You roll the die, you never know what's coming up, but depending on what you get, the reward could be different, right? Sometimes it's a very cool reward, sometimes it's not. But that excitement leads you to wanting to come back and try it over and over again. Same thing with near misses and close calls. For example, in Angry Birds or in Match 3 games, you will always have that situation where you missed it by one move, right? A lot of times that's engineered because the skill is matching the challenge, right? Or the challenge is matching the skill. When you have moments like that, what does the player do? They immediately want to come back and attempt it again, right? So trying to balance for that makes it very effective for the core loop. Other variability of reward comes from just rotating the rewards. If you have the same thing all the time and there's no variation, it gets a little bit boring. But try to incorporate an element of chance that can make for some outsized returns for the player. So those are 4 pieces, and we have the final one, which is progression and accomplishment. Core loops work best when the engagement with it leads to a sense of progression and accomplishment. Now, these can take many different forms, right? These can be leveling up, like the Stumble Guys example here. As you play through it, you gain XP, you make progress, and you level up. And that is more of an extrinsic validation, right? More accomplishment-led is the example of Call of Duty Mobile, where if you repeat certain skill feats over and over again, you get medals that signify how good you are. And that's more of an internal satisfaction of, I'm really good at this game, and the medals signify it. So having elements in your game, even simple things like XP-based leveling up, or a saga map, or unlockable content, or badges, can lead to this sense of satisfaction, either internally or extrinsically. So I've played a lot of games where I think the core loop is really good, but there isn't a sense of progression, right? And so ensure that your games do that. So question here, is your core loop effective based on these 5 things that I've stated, right? Think about what can be improved upon it for your games, and take those as action items that you can work on. All right, okay, so we talked about core loops, but like every good thing, there's always a catch, right? And the catch here is they can be short-lived. And the best analogy that I can give for this is, if you're someone who likes exercise, I kind of do, not always, but if you're like someone who likes exercise, you might jump on the treadmill and you might feel good doing it, right? But at some point you're going to get off it, right? You're not invested in it that much. But if you're training for a marathon, or if you're trying to lose 50 pounds, right? You're going to be on that more consistently, and you're going to try different things with it. You're going to try hill climbs and whatnot, right? So a purpose allows you to engage with the treadmill way more. And it's the same thing with core loops. What gives purpose for core loops are the goals, right? Having a goal ensures that you engage with the core loop over and over again. But goals come in many different forms. There are all kinds of different goals at different levels within the game. So how do you pick what to go with? How do you surface it? When do you surface it? And how do you layer this so that the player keeps coming back to your game? So for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start building out a framework as we go through this presentation. Again, there are 3 sections to this. Think about what in your game or in your world do you do in order to make these pieces work. We will share pieces of this as handouts digitally, so you will have it, so you don't have to draw it out on your notebooks in case you were trying to, but yeah. All right, for this I will start with what is at the very center of your game. This is called core gameplay. Core gameplay is slightly different from core loop. Core gameplay is the action piece. It is the fundamental mechanic in your game. In a match 3 game, it is about matching tiles and clearing them. In an RPG, it is about attacking enemies and defeating them. It is the fundamental mechanic that you repeat over and over again. It is what drives second-to-second gameplay in your game, right? And it is also the action piece of the core loop. So you step one step outside of that framework, you have the core loop, which is the motivation, action, and reward. Now, core loops drive your minute-to-minute experience in your game. This is what ensures that the player comes in and spends multiple minutes in your game. And this is where the first set of goals come in. I like to call them short-term goals. And these are goals that drive minute-to-minute experience. So here are some examples, right? Gameplay objectives. In mastery games, you have things that tell you, hey, blast 50 blue tiles and collect 20 umbrellas, right? Those are gameplay objectives. They change, but they also cause you to play your game slightly different ways each time, right? And that keeps things interesting. Daily login rewards. These are not directly tied to the core loop, but they're very effective because all the player has to do is come into the game, log in, maybe do one task, and they get a reward, right? These are a set of simple tasks that players can complete when they come into the game. These are not meant to take a lot of time, right? As soon as you play maybe 2 repetitions of your core loop, you're already through 70% of these tasks. But what it does is it gives you moments of satisfaction in addition to your core loop, right? That makes you feel like you're making good progress, right? Win streaks. These are things that require you to have sequences of success without failing in between, right? Whether that is beating a level or beating a certain type of enemy. So having win streaks allows you to stack up multipliers that you don't want to lose, right? And so players try to maintain it, and if you lose it, you come back and try to get up to the max again, because the rewards get better and better, right? So those are short-term goals. So think about what in your game functions as short-term goals that drive minute-to-minute experience and that causes your players to re-engage with the code loop over and over again. So if you step one more step outside of this, then we have goals that drive session-to-session and day-to-day experience, right? These I refer to as midterm goals or medium-term goals, right? Examples here are, for example, weekly tasks, which is the big brother of daily tasks, right? You can't finish them in like a single session. You usually have to play for multiple sessions or days to be able to wrap up your weekly tasks. But the interesting thing is, if you've already done your daily tasks, it's very likely that you've already made progress towards some of these. And that's the hook, right? And that results in the player wanting to complete the next set of larger goals. Now, the big brother of daily login rewards is daily login streak, which basically tells the player, hey, come back 7 days in a row in order to get a big reward, right? Again, it is half the time that the players come in every day, they may not play. But the 20%, the 10% who decide to stay and play is now engagement in your games, right? And they get more invested. Unlocking new content and features. These are essentially like saga maps. Like in Royal Match, you have, as you clear each room, you have the opportunity to unlock a fresh room. That, again, takes multiple days, right? And so you're excited to come back and feel like you're completing and progressing in your game. The next set of stuff is around limited time events, right? Limited time events are very powerful. They can take many different forms. In this case, I'm specifically going to talk about a few examples. Daily and weekly leaderboards. When I try out a lot of your games, I find that there is the leaderboard gizmo, and it's usually your global leaderboard, and it's most of the time it's all-time, meaning that there's no change in it. All-time leaderboards are tough because what does a new player do when they come in? They can't attach that goal because it's too far off, right? So there needs to be something that is more shorter, that are medium term, and that's why we talk about daily and weekly leaderboards. It allows players a chance every day to go after the top ranks, or every week to go after the top rank. And that creates a strong attachment with the game. And it also creates a ton of engagement. Then there are things like reward tracks. Reward tracks, it's kind of like a compressed version of your battle passes and your season passes. They're shorter. They can be sometimes accomplished in a day or multiple days. Like in Royal Match, you collect a certain number of items and you get a reward at every threshold, right? It requires multiple rounds of gameplay. In Cooking Madness, it is a one-day battle pass. It's a one-week battle pass, right? And you engage with your code loop to make progress along that track, and you win rewards along the way. So those are also very effective because you are constantly getting this feedback of progress, reward, that is sitting outside of your code loop, but requires you to engage with the code loop over and over again to achieve it. Finally, there are gameplay events, which is sort of like an abstraction of the things that we just talked about. It could be just an overlay that tells you, hey, if you defeat 1,000 of these enemies in this game, right, and you might have to do it across multiple days, then you will get X reward, right? But usually they're time-bound, right? They'll tell you, okay, you got to do this in 7 days or in 2 days, and then that creates urgency, and that encourages the players to go in and repeat the code loop until they achieve it. Again, moments of gratification throughout your player journey is what we are aiming for. Finally, if we step one more step outside of this loop, you have what is known as long-term goals. These ones drive experience in your game across weeks, across months. I don't see a lot of these in a lot of the games. It usually requires a lot of careful planning and thinking to set these up. But let's talk about some examples. Achieving max level or prestige. In Brawl Stars, if you want to prestige a character, you have to play with that character and be in the top 2,000 rank by the end of the season. And then you get a prestige. And that is a ton of time and skill invested into it, right? Season passes. Season passes or battle passes run for a month, 2 months, but they tie directly to your code loop, and it gives you a ton of rewards, but it also generates a large amount of engagement. What it causes is for players to stick around for a month, 2 months. And as players spend more time in your game, they get more attached, more invested, and they're having fun. And then there are much more meta goals, as I like to say, which is I want to collect everything in the game. I want to achieve all the achievements. I want to defeat all the enemies. I want to upgrade all the characters, right? These are goals that require additional content, but can be very powerful. Now, the interesting thing is a new player is not going to come into your game and attach to the long-term goals. That's very unlikely. What they will do, though, is that they will come into your game and they like your core mechanic, core gameplay. And because they like your core gameplay, they'll start playing the core loop. And as they engage with the core loop over and over again, they start attaching with the short-term goals because they're making progress. And because they are attached with the short-term goals, they start trying to complete it, which leads to more gameplay. And as they try to move through that, they make progress towards weekly tasks or midterm goals. Then they attach to the midterm goals. Now you have them for like 2 weeks. Now as the weeks pass, they start attaching to the longer term goals. And now we've got them playing your game, enjoying it, feeling invested, feeling attached, and engaging with you for weeks and months and becoming your golden cohort. All right, so like I was saying, when we layer these correctly, you create that graduation of the player from shorter goals to really long-term goals. And that is what creates retention within your game over longer periods of time. And if you have a certain percentage of players being retained from your new users on a daily basis, your active users in your game will increase steadily and surely, right? And that's the goal here. So I hope you've looked at what in your game is satisfying these different layers of goals, right? And think about how they're structured. Think about if you can do more that can create more positive moments of feedback, and take action items there that you can go back and work on. All right, okay, so this is sort of like a broken down chart, the same chart, but just broken down with the examples that I've given you. I think one of the outcomes that this has, when you do it right, is that it creates rituals for players, right? A habit of doing certain number of things in your game on a daily basis. And that in itself will tend to bring them back. It gives frequent moments of gratification, and it drives long-term retention. I've given the example of Pokemon Go here because I will also refer to this much later. I'm sure many of you play it. How many of you play Pokemon Go? There we go. Even if you haven't played in a long while, if you jump into that game today and you catch 2 Pokemon, you are already making progress towards your daily, your streaks, your chapter goals, and you are already hooked. And you want to keep going because you've entered it. I play Pokemon once a year for 2 months, each year, right? That's because accidentally I'm like, I want to show somebody a reference, and I open it up, and I'm like, I got to. So that's what happens with me. But they do a great job with it, right? All right. Okay, so pit stop here. I want to talk about 2 more things that amplify your core loops and goals. These are things that don't change the core loop, but they amplify it. And they don't change the goals, they amplify it. And they are emergent gameplay and shared experiences. Now, both of these are deep dives on its own. So I've only got just 1 slide on each, so it's not going to dive too far. But these are important pieces that specifically for our audience is relevant, right? Emergent gameplay is when players create their own forms of gameplay from the tools that you've provided, right? Best example for this is Minecraft, right? I saw somebody build a whole Minecraft game within the Minecraft world, right? And that is insane. I couldn't even begin thinking about doing something like that. But they do it because there is so much freedom within it. And then on the other side of the spectrum is games like Stumble Guys and Fall Guys, where ragdoll physics and multiplayer causes you to have emergent outcomes, right? You don't know what's going to happen. You figure out funny ways to deal with obstacles, and people adopt those, and it scales, right? And they have an amazing time. So that's emergent gameplay. And the other side of the coin is shared experiences, right? This is about social interaction that turns into memorable stories and community-driven narratives, right? Examples here are Among Us and Adopt Me from Roblox, where the game mechanics require you to interact with other players meaningfully, and because you do that, there are moments of delight and surprise and stories that you form with your friends, right? These are not easily accomplished. Some get lucky, but at the end of the day, I want to be careful. Shared experience does not equal social, because social can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. It can be sharing content to social channels. It can be voice chat, text chat. But shared experiences is a little bit more abstracted than that, meaning that it requires mechanics in your game to drive meaningful player interactions. They shouldn't interact just because there is voice chat. There has to be a reason, and your game has to drive that reason. So in Among Us, there is a reason for you to interact with the other players. Same thing with Adopt Me. There's a reason for you to interact because you want to trade for getting and get better pets, right? So that's what creates shared experiences. Most successful games do both. Like I can say that Among Us has emergent gameplay. So does Adopt Me, right? So they work together, and that's why they become super successful. All right. Again, these don't replace loops or goals. They make them meaningful, memorable, and they also create potential for virality, right? Which is something that everyone would want. Um, all right, okay, so just like core loop and the whole catch there, what's the catch with goals, right? The reality is goals can also run out. You can complete them. What do you do then, right? Or you can get bored of the goals. What do you do then, right? Do players stick around or do they go off to other games, right? So the answer to this is really live services, right? Live services, and my background is a lot of live services. It is about looking at launch of a game as not the end. That's when you actually start the process of servicing the game and making sure it stays fresh. So it's the change in mindset about thinking about post-game launch as a whole new phase where you actively work on the game. But let me ask you a question. How many of you think live services, this is a leading question, I don't know. How many of you think live services is just content updates? Nobody raised their hand. Okay, great, awesome. That's very encouraging because it's not, right? It's not just DLC, it's not just content update, it's definitely not just bug fixes or patches, and it's not a one-time thing, right? Live services is about the continuous update of your game with new content, new patches, new goals, new events, new rewards after launch, right? And doing this consistently. What it results in is that it allows you to keep your players engaged. It extends the lifespan of your loop. You don't have to build brand new systems or whole new core loops to sustain engagement. You can work with what you have. And my favorite thing, it allows for small tweaks to feel like fresh content. And that's what I think the magic is. And so let's look at what it involves. How do we connect live services to all the things that I just talked about, right? There are 4 principles here. First is refreshing regularly. Whether it is your rewards, your goals, your modifiers, your multipliers, the rate at which your currency is granted, refreshing them on a consistent basis, right? And then you add urgency to it. Everything must have meaningful end times, right? So if your leaderboard needs an end time, that's when it becomes a daily leaderboard or a weekly leaderboard. Your event needs a countdown timer that ends in 24 hours. That's when there is urgency that causes players to come back, right? So you refresh, and you refresh at certain time limits, right? And then the third piece is relevance. You have to make sure what you do is relevant to your core loop. It has to be tied deeply to your core loop on one side. And on the other side, you need to create relevance with what is happening in the player's real life, right? So think about holidays, think about Halloween, think about how can you bring some of these cultural memes into your game as part of an event, right? If it's Halloween, can you collect pumpkins? Can the enemies drop loot that is relevant, right? Can you make the difficulty harder but rewards higher, right? Things like that. And then finally, experiment often. Live services allow you to try out all kinds of different things because guess what? There is an end time to it and you can change it and no one will be upset. Or if you're upset, you can only have to deal with it for a certain amount of time, right? And then you change it, right? So you learn what works and what doesn't work and you scale based on that. So again, I just bring this back because it just talks about how do you apply the refresh, urgency, relevance, and experimentation to this whole structure. We will share that, so don't worry about it. But refresh your goals, refresh your rewards, refresh the objectives, add end times, add urgency, create relevance, and experiment across the board. Let me give you a couple of examples of some crazy live services. Pokemon Go, again, a favorite example of mine. This is a fan-made calendar, and it shows you what happens in February, right? It's got raids, it's got max raid. Every day there is something happening. There's max battles, spotlight hour, 6 to 7 p.m. every day on these dates, you get 2 times the XP for those Pokemons. There are community events. There are max Mondays during which you get certain Pokemons available to you. It is crazy how much they put in, right? But Pokemon Go is also a somewhat complex game, right, with a lot of systems. Match 3 could be a lot simpler, right? It's not. this is Royal Match, right? This is just a match 3 game, but they have so much going on. All of the blue stuff at the top is all store operations, meaning that it's starter packs, new content on sale, right? That's all the blue stuff. All the red stuff is all tournaments and leaderboards and events related to that. All the green stuff is all progression events. And at the bottom is like long-term goal formation, like collections and new content. What can you do today? We don't have to do all of that. For us, the best starting point is keeping things small, right? And this is what I recommend, right? Let's start, if you're not doing anything today, start small and lightweight. You just need to do one thing per week, right? So that's our goal. Do one thing per week. What do? You pick a parameter that you can tune, right? Don't build a whole new game system. Don't build a whole new core loop. You pick a parameter that you can tune. Can you change your rewards, your difficulty, your modifiers, your XP rate, your health bar of your monsters in your game? Pick a parameter that you can tune, and then pick a cadence. Can you do this on a daily basis or a weekly basis? Figure out what is the cadence that you can actually support, right? And make sure that these things tie to your core loop. So for example, could you make every Friday a double XP or a double the reward? If you can find one variable in your table that allows you to change it on a regular basis and tie it to your core loop, then you have something that is the beginning of a live service, right? But the goal here is, like I was saying, could you do double XP? Could you make your monsters harder? Could you ensure that between certain times of the day that you get extra rewards, or it gives you a new goal? Or it could be even simple. Use the leaderboard gizmo to change it to daily leaderboards. You reset it daily, and that in itself is a big change, and you sustain it, right? I definitely know in the leaderboard gizmo you can achieve daily resets and weekly resets. So that is an opportunity, right? But the core idea here is that you do the simple thing, but you aim for consistency, not complexity. The goal is not to immediately build more and more layers on top of it. The idea is to be consistent about it. And then you share this with your community, tell them about it, either through your world detail page, through your social channels, through your in-game, right? Have a banner, have a message, have a title change that tells you that this event or this particular thing is happening at this time, right? Have a countdown timer if you can do it, right? And that is the foundation for it. The idea here is, can you refresh the context around your core loop and your goals on a consistent basis? If you can do that, then over time, your players will trust that there is something to come back to in your game. And that's what the foundation of live services is. How well is your game working? To make sure all of this is doing well and to figure out if it's actually working, you need to look at data, right? Question for you, how many of you all look at your creator analytics portal on a regular basis? Nice. I see a lot of hands, but I also see not a lot of hands. So, the thing about being in live services or looking at operating a free-to-play game is that whether you like it or not, just look at it every day, every week, right? Because what it does is, over time, your brain is going to find patterns, right? You will get a sense of what your metrics generally trend around. And when you do things in the game, you realize that it has changed, right? And then it creates a pattern recognition for yourself that helps you make decisions. So I have a bunch of questions that I think are fundamental questions that everybody should try and answer for their games on a regular basis. I'm going to run through it quickly. For example, how well is my game attracting users, right? In your creator analytics portal, you've got world impressions and click-through rates. These tell you how many people are seeing it and how many people are actually clicking through your world detail page. How many users are playing your game, right? You need to know what your daily, weekly, and monthly active usage is, right? And you also want to know how much concurrency you get on a regular basis, right? How many new users visit your game? The L1 status and L7 status charts in your creator analytics portal tell you that, right? And that gives you an idea of how much fresh inflow you're getting, right? How many users come back to the game on a regular basis? This is a very key metric that even we internally use to assess all of your games as well as internal products, right? It is about whether the player comes back in 1 day, in 7 days, in 30 days, right? These charts tell you that, and the returning new visitor tells you about your new user and whether they come back on a regular basis. And how long do players stay in your game? Another key metric. What is the average time that a player spends in your game, right? The sustained visit rate basically tells you what percentage of your audience will stay for more than 5 minutes at any given time, right? And these both are metrics that are also important for us and we look at on a regular basis. All of these 5 questions can be answered today for your game by going to Creator Analytics portal, right? The next 3, these are available in Creator Analytics portal, but it requires you to do some amount of engineering to integrate in-game analytics. But essentially, figuring out where do the players spend their time inside your game, if they are going through the steps of your tutorial, are they finishing the code loop even once? Where do players drop off in that journey? These are 3 pieces of information that is very important to how well you're able to retain players, right? And integrating analytics, in-game analytics to your game enables you to see these charts inside Creator Analytics portal. And I know that Rebecca's session and later is going to cover a little bit about that. All right, second last thing on my plate, using data to make decisions. I tried to build out an example of how in the games, free-to-play games industry, we look at data and how to apply decisions based on that. Hopefully this gives you a mental framework. Let's say you wake up and you see that your DAU is super low or is declining, right? And you see that in the chart that I just showed you. Now, there are 3 possible reasons for that to happen, right? Either you're not getting any more new users, or your new users are not coming back after playing 1 session, or your existing users have stopped coming back, right? Now, let's take the first one, new users declining, which you will find out in your L1 status, L7 status charts, right? What are the possible reasons for that? Think about it, right? It could be that you're not getting enough new impressions, right? Or you're getting new impressions, but your world detail page is not converting, right? So you have 2 actions from that, right? One is improve the quality of world detail page, or check your tags, make sure your game's discoverable. If something is broken there, raise a bug and figure out what's going wrong, right? Now let's say this whole branch wasn't what you were trying to solve for, and it's not valid, right? Let's look at new users or existing users not returning to your game, right? Now you look at the returning visitors day 1, day 7, day 30 chart, and you figure out, okay, which of these lines is falling, right? Because that tells you different things, right? For example, if your day 1 is users are not returning in 1 day after they play your game, the chances are maybe they never finished the tutorial, right? Maybe they didn't get to your core gameplay. So you get to look at these charts, especially with in-game analytics, to be able to identify where the players are dropping off. And each of those have actions that you can take. For example, are you communicating your tutorial with clarity? Is the UI flow broken? Is there a dead end in how you've structured it, right? Are the rewards not exciting? Are they not having fun with your core game, right? All of these could happen, right? And so you have an opportunity by going through this process to identify where should you put effort into in order to improve the performance of your game. And finally, it could be none of these things, and it could be that the game is not stable. So you look at crash rates and hitch rates, and you figure out, hey, or you look at your community to see if there are player bugs, and then you use that to triage your bugs and fix them in order to improve the game. I know this is like a high-level model, but this is how we look at data and analyze it to figure out where to put in our efforts. And to do all of that, you need to keep your tabs on your Creator Analytics portal and build an understanding there. All right. I've got one last thing, which will be quick. We've done, our UXR teams internally have done a lot of research around our target audience, and they've figured out that there are 5 motivations that really work for our audience, right? Now, all of the things that I spoke about so far, the code loops, the goal formation, the live services, if they all tie towards motivations that are relevant to your audience, it just amplifies its effectiveness. So here are the 5. 1, customization. The desire to express your individuality or customize the game space or avatars or items in it. And an example here is Animal Crossing. Collection. It's about collecting all the fun things in the game, and I want to complete those collections. Example here is Pokemon Go. Care. It's about wanting to care and nurture for things in the game, right? I would argue, this example is of Suki's Odyssey, which is a mobile game. I would also argue Grow a Garden exhibits this, right? Because it's about taking care of the plants and having crazy visual outcomes from it, right? Competition, it's about showing off your skill, your mastery, and your status, right? Clash Royale is a great example of this. Narrative, playing to create a story or create your own story with other players in a game. The example here is a game called Reigns, which was on mobile as well. But the interesting thing is a lot of games combine these motivations together, right? Narrative can be combined with any of the other pieces, and you can create it. My favorite example, Pokemon Go, is a game that has all of these motivations in some form or the other, right? That means that anybody who comes into the game has something to attach to. The last piece here is that, like I was saying, narrative ties to all these motivations. So does social, right? Social or shared experiences will tie to all of these pieces. And the best thing is to try and make sure that there is one key motivation that your game's trying to target as you start small, and make sure that the audience understands it, and make sure your core game, your goals, your live services all tie towards that. All right, I hope that is essentially the end of my presentation. I hope I've given you at least a mental model to think about this. The idea was to connect and show you the thread from your core game all the way to live services and motivations. So I'm going to pause here. Thank you so much. And yeah, we've got Q&A now.
So when you see a hand up, someone will come over with a microphone. Would love for you to introduce yourself. Let us know your username, maybe a world that you've created, just to help us get to know you. And please do use the microphone so that everyone, even on the that we're streaming to, can hear you as well. Thank you, guys.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, good to see you again.
For those of you who don't know me, Benjamin, aka Habiter from HabitXR. Love the overview you gave on data and making decisions based on data. As you may know, there's currently a 7-day delay on the data that we're getting. So looking at live ops services that require daily or even once a week, it's very difficult for us to make data-driven decisions because we're not getting it in a timely manner. So are there any plans to improve the reliability of data, which right now can be on anywhere from a 3 to 7 day delay, depending on the weather, I guess? Are there any plans to improve that? Or is there any improves to get that down to a daily cadence? Are there any plans to improve that to live data?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And if you're getting your data 3 or 7 days later, you are not going to be able to use it for live services. That is the absolute truth. Now, having said that, where's Rebecca? Do I see Rebecca somewhere? I do believe there are plans to improve it, and I think, Chris, are you able to comment on it?
Yes, there's a known issue going on at the moment that we are looking to get that fixed, but we're then trying to build some monitoring so we catch it earlier as well, so we get notifications if there's any kind of outage there. I think to get to less than 48 hours, we're going to have to do some more work. That becomes a more costly measure, but it's definitely on the roadmap of things we want to try and get to for sure.
This year, next year?
I think, too, as you go through today, as you spend time this afternoon and evening talking with different meta folks and even tomorrow at the roundtables, letting us know how it impacts you and your work, that's what really helps us to prioritize then on our roadmaps for when we get to certain features. Because a lot of times we hear a lot of different requests, but it's really helpful to understand the impact that it's having on you as a creator for us and the teams here to help you prioritize.
Yeah, and 100%, you need to get your data in real time. Well, real time is a little bit out there, but at least the day before, we need to get to that point. So,
just for example, if I release a game, right, the most discovery when a new game is released is basically the day that you release it. You post on Discord, LinkedIn, whatever. You put out your ad blast, and so to get the data 3 days later to find out that users aren't finishing the tutorial, that's a correction that needs to be made.
Yes.
On launch day.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's an absolutely valid point, and we do have to prioritize and action on it. No arguments there at all. I know what it feels to not have data in time, so I'm with you on it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thanks. Yeah, not so much a question, but I know we're coming up to the end here, and I just want to say, wow, you guys at Meta, thank you guys for this journey that we're all on together. This is cool. This is hard.
Yes, it is.
This is frustrating. but this is wildly rewarding. To see community come together and do some stuff, it's great. And again, everybody that I've had the opportunity to come in contact with Meta, you guys are spectacular, and you're doing wonderful things that are changing the world. So
Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate
you.
that. And we do know and we recognize that there are very frustrating moments. We are not blind to it. And I believe all of our team's platform product, everyone's working really hard to make things better because, well, that's how we all win, right? And so absolutely, all of our efforts are in that direction. And your feedback helps. Even frustration helps, right? Because it helps priority, right? So appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. I think we have time for one more question.
Hey, Anish. It's Lakes, our video. I really appreciate this talk. It's one I've given many times myself. There's so many great things in here, and I also understand where everyone's coming from. There's so much, it's impossible to take it on. For me, having been here for almost 5 years, the reality is I've been slowly building it. So each one of those things was something I built 1 month, and then another month I added on to it. And now that we have TypeScript, it's very, very easy to copy that code. We've got the new public asset library. Woo, woo, woo! That's amazing. It's going to make it so much easier to share assets. And there was a lot of things in there that I was even overwhelmed by, just so everyone's clear. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I want that, but that's so much work. Anyway, but I really appreciate the examples, and I think it's something we can all strive for and try to work together, building assets and stuff. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Well, so no question in there, but thank you so much, Lakes.
Sorry.
No, Anish, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
This was great.
Good meeting you all.